If you listen closely to the final verse of She Moved Through the Fair, the warmth of the romance vanishes. The bride returns not as a living woman, but as a silent, gliding figure. She is dead. This song is the definitive Irish ghost story and is classified as a Revenant ballad, a narrative where the boundary between the living and the dead crosses, but it might also serve as a hybrid. It was born from the specific collaboration between the poet Padraic Colum and the musicologist Herbert Hughes, who fused the oral traditions of County Donegal with the refined aesthetics of the Irish literary revival. Throughout this video, we're going to dissect that collaboration. We will examine the Mixolydian mode that gives the melody its unresolved, haunting tension and unique quality, and we will trace how a rural folk fragment was engineered into a masterpiece. Let's have a look at the history behind this absolutely beautiful and haunting song. We can trace the song's global arrival to 1909. That year, Herbert Hughes included it in his book Irish Country Songs. Before this publication, the tune existed only in the oral traditions of Donegal. Hughes was the one who finally wrote it down and secured its future. Herbert Hughes was a Belfast-born musicologist and critic who played a pivotal role in the preservation of traditional Irish music. Unlike some purist collectors who sought to preserve songs exactly as sung by the peasantry, which were often unaccompanied and rhythmically free, Hughes was interested in arranging these melodies for the piano and the concert platform. Hughes had a specific goal. He took that wild Donegal melody and wrapped it in a classical arrangement. He needed it to fit the drawing rooms of Dublin and London. This distinction is key. The song we know today is not a rough field recording. It is a polished piece of work, carefully designed by a professional composer. And who was Padraic Colum? He was a central figure in the Irish literary revival, working alongside W.B. Yeats and Lady Gregory. But he came from a different world. Born in a Longford workhouse, he had a genuine connection to the rural working class. He was a poet who captured the rhythm of real Irish speech. For this song, he acted as a restorer. He took the scattered verses and shaped them into the story that we know today. The genesis of this song can be traced to a walking tour of County Donegal undertaken by Hughes and Colum in the early years of the 20th century. Donegal, located in the extreme northwest of Ireland, was and remains a region of immense cultural significance. It was a Gaeltacht or an Irish-speaking area, geographically isolated by mountains and bogland, which allowed ancient traditions and songs to survive long after they had vanished from the more anglicised East Coast. During this trip, the two men collected melodies from local singers. The methodology was informal. They would visit cottages, share hospitality, and Hughes would note down melodies on his staff while Colum listened to the words. It was this context that they encountered the air that would become She Moved Through the Fair. The specific source of the melody is often debated, but it is generally accepted to be a variant of a song known locally as Our Wedding Day or I Once Had a True Love. The proof didn't arrive until 1970. Near the end of his life, Padraic Colum wrote a letter to the Irish Times, and he wanted to clarify exactly what he wrote and what he didn't. He admitted that the song they originally heard in Donegal was mostly clumsy and disjointed, but there was one exception. The final verse, the vision of the dead lover entering the room, was the only part he kept exactly as he found it. Think about what that means. The walk through the fair, Colum likely wrote that. The love story was the modern edition. The only piece of song that is truly ancient is the ghost. Colum didn't invent the haunting, he just built a narrative structure to house it. The opening verse grounds us in reality. These are young lovers dealing with the harsh economics of rural Ireland. There is a specific word here that unlocks the whole story, the kind. When she says, "My parents will not slight you for your lack of kind."
And my father was like you, for your lack of kind.
Most people assume she means kindness or type. She doesn't really in this situation. It is actually a corruption of an old word, kine, K-I-N-E. This is an archaic word for cattle. In the Ireland of the past, cows were currency. If you didn't have cattle, you didn't have a dowry. You were broke. So she's telling him that her father won't reject him just because he's poor. She is removing the financial barrier to their marriage. This makes the tragedy much worse. They successfully overcame the obstacles of the living world, money, class, and parental approval. They fixed everything. But just as they cleared the path to the altar, a much darker obstacle was waiting for them.
She stepped away from me, and she moved through the fair. And so fondly I watched her go here and go there.
This verse paints a vivid picture. The fair represents the chaos of society. It is a place full of noise, commerce, and life. Notice the contrast in the lyrics. The narrator is frozen, he's just watching. She's the one active, moving away from him and dissolving into the crowd. This is the moment of separation. In the logic of a ghost story, this is the last time he ever sees her as a living, breathing woman. By moving through the fair, she's passing through the world of the living, destined for somewhere else.
Then she went away homeward with one star away, as the swan in the evening moves over the lake.
The imagery gets heavy here. She's compared to a swan moving over a lake. In Irish myth, swans aren't just pretty birds. Think of the children of Lear. Swans are often shapeshifters or messengers from the other world. By comparing her to a swan, the song is distancing her from humanity. She is becoming something ethereal. Then we have the one star awake, and this sets the scene at dusk. In folklore, twilight is a thin place, a gateway between night and day, or the living and the dead. She is going homeward, but as we are about to see, home isn't a house. It is the grave. The missing verse now. Most modern versions skip this next part.
The people were saying no to railway, but one has a sorrow that never was shared.
This is the missing link. It confirms here that the wedding never happened. It speaks of a sorrow too painful to mention. Including this verse removes all the ambiguity. It tells us that the woman visiting him in the final verse isn't a dream. She is a ghost. And now we reach the climax. The timeline jumps to last night. We are no longer at the busy fair. We are in his bedroom. This is where the lyrics matter the most. Some singers soften the blow and sing, "My young love came in," but the true version, sung by the likes of McCormick, doesn't hide anything. "My dead love came in." There is no ambiguity there.
Last night I did dream it, my young love came in.
The song says her feet made no din. Din here is just an old word for noise. Ghosts are weightless. They don't disturb the floorboards. The silence of her entry here is the complete opposite of the noise of the fair from earlier on. Then she touches him and delivers the final line. "It will not be long, love, till our wedding day." This is the twist, in my opinion. Since she is dead, she can't come back to life to marry him. A marriage between the living and the dead is impossible, as you know. You can guess what I'm going to say next. So she isn't promising to return. She is predicting his death. In folklore, she's acting as a fetch. A spirit sent to collect a dying soul. She's telling him to get ready. The wedding day she's talking about is probably the day of his funeral. They will be reunited, but only in the grave. Now we need to talk about why this song actually sounds haunted. The haunting feeling is engineered directly into the music itself, using something called the Mixolydian mode. There's more than just your standard keys in music. Very simply, imagine the scale of C. It goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. No sharps, no flats. In C Mixolydian, you just flatten the 7th note. So that B becomes a B flat. That's it really. It's one small change, but it makes a massive difference. In a normal scale, that B note desperately wants to go up to C, but the B flat, it doesn't. It just floats there. It leaves you hanging. This musical trick mirrors the story perfectly. The lover is caught between life and death. The narrator is caught between waiting and grief. The music refuses to give you the satisfaction of a happy ending, just as the ghost refuses to leave the narrator's mind. This scale was practically built for Irish instruments like the uilleann pipes or the fiddle. Why? Because of the drone. The drone is that low, constant note that plays underneath the melody and never really stops. When you play that flattened 7th note we just talked about against the steady low drone, it creates friction, it rubs against the harmony. That clash is what gives ancient Celtic music that hypnotic, trance-like feeling. This sound is so distinct that it actually travelled halfway around the world. In the 1960s, the legendary guitarist Davy Graham noticed something strange. He realised that this "She Moved Through the Fair" melody sounded almost exactly like Indian classical music, specifically a raga. He started playing the song with those Eastern influences. It proved that this Celtic drone wasn't just Irish, it was ancient. It tapped into a mystical sound that connects cultures that are thousands of miles apart. This song didn't just appear out of thin air. It grew out of the specific hard soil of County Donegal. If you have ever been to or live in Donegal, you know it is a place apart. It's rugged, it's wild, and for a long time it was completely cut off from the British laws being made down in Dublin. Because of that isolation, the old ways held on much longer here. Beliefs in fairies, curses and ghosts weren't just bedtime stories for children. They were a genuine part of daily life, but the people didn't just stay put. There was a massive tradition of seasonal migration. Men and women would travel from Donegal across to Scotland for the potato harvest. They took that boat across the North Channel and they took their songs with them. That is why you find versions of this melody in Scotland too. And vice versa, a lot of songs from Scotland are found in Donegal. It belongs to a shared sea kingdom that connected the two coasts. When the lyrics mention the fair, don't picture a modern fun fair. Think of a hiring fair. In rural Ireland, these were critical. It was where you sold your cattle, or worse, where you sold your own labour. These events were loud, chaotic and packed with people. For a young couple, it was one of the few places they could actually be seen together in public. The song uses this setting for a specific reason. The fair represents the absolute peak of life and noise. By having the woman move through the crowds and then disappear homeward, the song creates a brutal contrast. She leaves the noisiest place on earth and enters the silence of the grave. She was vibrant and visible one moment and gone the next. This song isn't a one-off. It belongs to a very specific dark family of folklore known as Revenant songs. The rules of the genre were terrifyingly simple. If you grieved too much, your tears would disturb the dead and wake them up. Or if you made a promise, like a marriage vow, death didn't let you out of the contract. You still had to honour it. In most of these songs, the ghost is physically dangerous. There is a famous line in The Unquiet Grave: "One kiss of your clay-cold lips, and my time will not be long." In She Moved Through the Fair, the encounter feels softer. She doesn't attack him. She just lays a hand on him. But don't let the romance fool you. It is still a summons. Colum might have polished the rough edges, but the core message is the same. The dead have come to collect a debt. The reason this specific ghost interpretation survived isn't just down to folklore. It is down to the singers who decided which version of the truth to tell. Over the last century, 5 key recordings locked this supernatural narrative into history. It started in 1941 with John McCormack. McCormack was a global superstar of the gramophone era. When he recorded this, he sang with the crystal clear enunciation of a classically trained tenor. Most importantly, he made a choice. He didn't sing Young Love, he sang My Dead Love. Because of his fame, this became the gold standard. He codified the lyrics for future generations, ensuring the ghost story didn't fade away. Then, in the 1950s, the song went back to the streets with Margaret Barry. Barry was a legendary traveller and street singer with a voice that could cut glass. The irony here is beautiful. She actually learned the song from a John McCormack record. It proves the cycle of Irish music. A street song became high art, and then Margaret Barry took it back to the pavement. She played it on the banjo with a raw, harsh power that stripped away McCormack's polish. But she kept that crucial dead love lyric. By the 1960s, Anne Briggs stripped it back even further. A key figure in the British folk revival, Briggs performed it a cappella. No piano, no banjo, just her voice. Her version feels like a private hallucination, without any instrumentation to hide behind that Mixolydian melody. Feels stark and exposed. It influenced an entire generation of folk rockers, including Led Zeppelin. planting the seed that this wasn't just a folk song, but something mystical. In 1988, Van Morrison and the Chieftains took that mysticism and slowed it to a crawl. On the album Irish Heartbeat, they wrapped the song in a thick mist-like atmosphere of uilleann pipes and fiddles. Morrison repeats phrases over and over, entering a trance-like state. He delivers the dead love line not with fear, but with a heavy spiritual resignation. And finally we arrive at the version that defines the song for the modern generation. Sinead O'Connor in 1996. Recorded for the Michael Collins soundtrack, this version feels like a requiem. Sinead flips the gender, singing He Moved Through the Fair, creating a female perspective on grief. Her voice is breathy and fragile. She sounds like a ghost herself. By pairing this song with the assassination of Collins, she cemented it as the soundtrack of national trauma. It became a song about martyrdom, civil war, and the tragedy of young lives cut short. When you stack up the evidence, the verdict is clear. She Moved Through the Fair is a masterpiece of constructed folklore. Padraic Colum took a fragmented, clumsy ghost story from the wilds of Donegal and polished it into a universal ballad. The ghost is the structural foundation of the entire song. We see it in the lyrics. Every line leads inevitably to that final, brutal revelation of the dead love. The missing verse about the sorrow that never was said is the smoking gun. We hear it in the music. That Mixolydian mode creates a perpetual state of suspension. It refuses to resolve. It mirrors the limbo of the spirit perfectly. And finally, we have the confession from Colum later himself. He confirmed that the vision of the dead lover was the seed that started it all. He built a narrative structure specifically for the ghost to live in. It captures the universal experience of grief. It validates the feeling that the people we lose are merely moving through a different space, out of sight, waiting for the rest of us to catch up. So thanks so much for watching. Before you go, if you made it this far, please hit that like button. You've no idea, but it really helps the video out. It helps it reach more people. As well as that, if you'd like to see more Irish music videos in future, click that subscribe button so you don't miss future uploads. This video was touching a little bit on the unquiet grave there. I did a video recently on the music of Newfoundland and how it acted as like a time capsule. So if you have time, check out this video here. I'm fairly sure you'll like it. And as well as that, if you have time for a browse, have a look at the shop there where I have some Irish music themed bits and pieces. From like hats, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and a little bit more too. And as always, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our channel members. Thanks so much for your continued support. You're absolute legends. If you'd like to join them, hit that join button down below or check out the links in the description for more information. But yeah, look, I'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great day. Slán go fóill. Cheers.